Okay, hello again, everybody. Hopefully you can see me and hear me. My name is Chris Wells. I'm with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. It is now 7:02, and as I said a minute ago, if you weren't here, we give everybody an extra minute or two to get on the virtual meeting. However, in respect of everybody's time, we will go ahead and get started. I'm joined tonight by Steve Welch of VDOT and Supervisor Alcorn from the Board of Supervisors. Before I move on, though, let me just briefly go over the script of information I need to go over for a virtual meeting, but I will not literally read it and be brief. The first most important thing to know is this meeting is being recorded, and so you'll be able to view it off of our webpage. You're welcome to ask questions, and we would ask that you use the Q&A function in WebEx to ask questions, not the chat. The Q&A function will allow all the presenters to be able to see the questions, and then the other staff member here tonight, Lauren Delmar of Fairfax County, will read us those questions at the end. Also at the end, there'll be information on how to use your cell phone if you're on your cell phone tonight to virtually raise your hand and ask a question with that. Lastly, if we don't get to your question or if we can't answer your question, we'll have your email through the WebEx platform and can get back to you directly. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over quick to Supervisor Alcorn for a welcome greeting.
Thank you very much, Chris. Look forward to learning more tonight. I know this is yet another one of those meetings that we typically have done in person, and yet we're here on this platform, which I guess has its benefits. If you can see, I'm out of my deck, so I'm gonna just put myself on mute and listen, and be happy for any of the folks out there that have follow-up questions or issues relating to county activities. Be happy to talk with them afterwards. So thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Steve, and the VDOT team.
Sure, thank you very much, Supervisor Alcorn. So real briefly, this is a joint effort of the county and VDOT, and Steve Welch of VDOT will do his presentation in the first half, and then he'll hand it back over to me for my presentation. But just a simple summary of what this is and what we're doing. For over 10 years now, the county and VDOT have collaborated in the repaving season, looking for opportunities to improve roadways, improve communities by changing the striping. The basic premise is when the road is paved, it's essentially a blank canvas, and the stripes could be put back as they were, or they could be put back differently. 10 years ago, we were originally just focused on a bicycle network, bike lanes, again, just looking at roads that are wide and could fit bike lanes. But as we've evolved this relationship with the communities, we've also realized that communities are just as interested, if not more interested, in issues in their neighborhoods, such as speeding or cut-through traffic. And so we'll go over how this all works and what we have tonight to discuss for this summer of 2021 in the Hunter Mill District. So with that, Lauren, if you can stop me sharing or as presenter and hand it over to Steve. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. One moment, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do here is minimize. And can everyone see a white screen with VDOT on it?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see anything else. I'm just going to work on my way through this. So good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Welch. I'm with VDOT. I'm one of two assistant district transportation and land use managers. And I'm here tonight to just go over our VDOT paving program and how it works, and also a little bit about this upcoming 2021 year. In general, going to hit on the topics of our program itself, the budget, how we plan and execute the paving, couple questions that are always of real interest are how are roads selected and how are condition ratings determined. Also, pavement treatment types, our dashboard, in other words, performance, and then our marking and striping plan and some helpful information. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and work on through it. So just a little background, in Northern Virginia District, our VDOT roadways consist of over 14,000 lane miles. In Fairfax County, over half of those lane miles are in Fairfax County, as you can see, 7152. The remaining is split almost equally between Loudoun and Prince William. And then there are some in Arlington that we maintain, but those are largely just the interstates and a few of the primaries. Arlington maintains most of their roads. So our budget each year is these are state maintenance funds, strictly maintenance funds for the purposes of, in this case, repaving and related activities that we're talking about. This year, fiscal 2021, you can see over on the far right, we've got $108 million, which is actually a slight uptick from the prior 2 years, which is a good thing considering how, things have been the past year. We were a little fearful it might actually drop a little bit, but that's a good thing. And so we're continuing to work our way through keeping up with the paving around the district as best we can with the budgets that we have. And you can see kind of the history over the years going back to coming out of the 2000, early 2010 recession, if you will, how it's increased over time and then flattened off, and we're in a good place. So the planning and construction, even though everyone sees the actual construction during the season itself of April to October, is actually for us, or I should say our pavement management team, is a year-long venture. Right now, they are gathering data for next construction season. And that data will continue to be gathered into the summer. And in the fall, they'll begin looking at draft schedules and trying to lay out how many lane miles they can get accomplished and where. The entire program is actually run out of our central office with coordination level at our district level. Then in the winter, we complete our contracts and close them out from this past year. And then we start advertising for bids. Bids are received and executing the contracts and giving notice to proceed, typically around the March timeframe. And so now it's construction season, and we have got started. So something that's always asked are how are roads selected for pavement? We do that based on pavement condition, obviously, but we also use traffic volumes. We try to look at entire neighborhoods versus perhaps just the main street through a neighborhood. We also look at avoiding locations where we know there's an existing project that's coming, whether it's one of ours, one of the counties, or maybe a utility project, so long as we know about it. In some cases, there's a water main break or something like that, and no one can predict necessarily that happening. So there are occasions where that happens even after we just finish paving. We also look at economies of scale and mobilization. So everywhere that we do a paving project, you've seen it, I'm sure, but we have tractor trailers that deliver in milling equipment, then paving equipment. Typically, they'll mill through the neighborhood and follow behind that with paving, but they'll move the miller to another neighborhood after that. Hopefully, it's one that's close by, or we try to plan it out that way to maximize the usage of the funds and keep it as economical as possible. And also we look at feedback from our maintenance crews. So how is the data collected? So we have these contract out, these highly technical vans that are full of all kinds of equipment that measure pavement distress, roughness, texture, rutting. It actually scans the surface, records it all, takes measurements, and does video imagery, and of course GPS is part of that, so we can go back and look at anything or any anomalies in the data. Then we subject it to a rating system that's has to be anywhere from 60 to 100 is our goal. We do have a lot of roads in the poor and very poor condition that we are still continue to work on. And that's where we target first, is the very poor, and work our way up to poor. So, and it is a cycle, so we continue to work to try to improve it overall. The other one is, how do we use data? How often do we collect the data? And we do that annually on all the roads, all the interstate, all the primary. And until this year, because of the large number of secondary roads, we only were able to do 20% of the roads, or 100% every 5 years. But starting this year, we're also collecting all the data every year on every one of the roads. So another question we get is, how do we use traffic volumes to make that decision? So what's highly important is our high volume interstate primary and secondary routes, those with average annual daily traffic greater than 3,500. We require have a goal of 82% of those must maintain a rating of 60 or greater. Then we look at low volume primary and secondary, those that are less than 3,500 annual average daily traffic. And we establish a goal of 75 and 60%. That basically sets the framework for how we go about establishing which roads we're going to go after. So budget, condition, travel volumes, economies of scale. So last year, and this is a kind of a track record of the last few years of the data that we have available. And as you can see in the far right, 2020, we've gotten it maintained at least that 82% on the interstate and primary. And we've come a long way since coming out of the recession in 2014 to get up to 2020 to 59%, almost reaching our 60% goal. And we'll continue to raise that bar as funds are available to do so. But we do have to maintain the interstate and primaries, especially the high volume ones, all the interstates, because for many of the obvious reasons. So how do we treat the roads? In many cases, we'll use a preventive maintenance which is 3 different types. We'll seal, we'll do some patching, and we'll do some crack seal. That's all to expand on and extend the life of the pavement for ones that we just cannot get to this year, or perhaps even the following year. Typically, that gives us another 4 or 5 years out of the life of the pavement. And then we have 2 forms of what technically is called plant mix, but it's corrective maintenance, where we mill and overlay, and we do that in either a 2-inch or 2 to 4-inch passing, depending upon how bad it is. In some cases, albeit rare, we have to excavate an entire section of a road because perhaps it's older, has a very old base to it, has many years on it, and just requires that being done. So a couple ways that we communicate how we're going about accomplishing this program is we have a pavement condition map. And what both of this and the next one that I'm going to explain are available online to you. And it's under virginiaroads.org. But what this does here is, if you remember a few slides back, I explained the rating scales, which go from red, very poor, graduates, all the way up to excellent. This is a snapshot of VDOT maintained roads at the point in time, and it just so happens to be centered on Reston area. And as you can see, these roads that are red in 2018 on this screenshot here were very poor. Those in blue were excellent, and they were likely ones that were done just before that. And then you have a few that are in between. When you look on the pavement condition map, and this is just one screenshot of it, you'll notice too that there are some roads that have no highlight at all. Those are privately maintained roads, whether they're in condo association areas and maintained by them, or commercial areas. And in this case, off to the left is the town of Herndon, which they maintain their own roads. And if you were to go on the pavement condition map today, you'd see that some of these very roads that are red are now blue because they've been updated, repaved recently. So for the next one, this is what we call our pavement status map. Now this comes out every year and just came out a couple Mondays ago after the culmination of the beginning of the season. Typically happens about mid-March to 1st of April. We didn't think it was going to come out till a little later in April, but it came out earlier than anticipated. It is a live interactive map. You can zoom in, zoom out. In this case, I took a screenshot of an area to demonstrate that if you click on one of those, so at the time that this was taken, first of all, it was very early in the season. So this was the beginning of the season. Everything in red is scheduled. As it becomes active, it turns green and it'll say in progress on the legend over to the right. Once it's completed, the road will be changed to blue in the mapping. It may not be real time, but it'll get there. And then one thing you can do, and I'm moving my cursor around on the screen, is you can click on one of these roads that are going to be paved, and up will pop a palette right there in the center of the screen that'll give you the project manager's name, phone number, email address, and a little information about the project itself. But most importantly, if you ever have any questions, you live in that neighborhood, you click on that road, you can contact that project manager's name and ask them when that road's going to be paved. If it's during the process of paving and you have a question because something's going on, you need to ask, you can do it that way. And even after it's done, you can ask them if they're, every now and then there's maybe a little cleanup afterwards that got overlooked or something, and they'll come back and make sure it's straightened out. But that's a live interactive map that we put out every year. The condition map seems to be put out about once every 2 years, but the real important one is this one here especially, but they're both available online at virginiaroads.org. Lastly, as Chris mentioned, in order for us to repave the road, we have to take up all the pavement markings. And when we do that, our engineers do some work to put back them in kind, but we also look at, from the standpoint of our contractors, putting in adjusting crosswalks where they know they could maybe run a slight skew, could be straightened out, edge lines could be improved or extended, what have you. Those are things we normally do. The next level down is that second bullet here, is that in some cases we'll go back and look at maybe there's a network or safety operational need that we can improve upon. For example, if there's space to lengthen a right turn lane or a left turn lane, because maybe the median is asphalt as opposed to a concrete median, our engineers will study that, look at the movements of traffic, and recommend and develop the engineering, which has to be looked at from an operational standpoint, and develop the plans to give out with the bids for the project. And then lastly, once we have a good idea of what roads are going to be repaved, from a draft standpoint, that's when we start working with Fairfax County to look at what roads we know are going to be, or 99% sure are going to be done, repaved, but there might be opportunities that the county would like to include a shared lane, a standard bike lane, a buffered lane, and perhaps some other pedestrian improvements, a new crosswalk where one didn't exist before, even if that's in the case of just being a marking, that is. And there are other things that have to come with that sometimes that don't allow that to happen. But overall, then, what our engineers work with the county engineers to then try to figure out, okay, how can we not only pave the road, not only put the pavement markings where need be back in kind, but also take it one step further and make use of the opportunity to add bike lanes in various forms. So lastly, I just wanted to give you some information about how to contact us. It's easiest, as you can see on here, we have the 1-800-for-road. It's easiest to do so by the my.vdot.virginia.gov. That goes to a central ticketing, which gets dispersed to whatever department needs to respond to it. And then once again, the pavement condition map and the 2021 paving map is available on the virginiaroads.org website. So with that, I just want to say thank you and stay safe, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chris.
Great, thank you, Steve. All right, I will share my screen. PowerPoint. Oops, share, start. Okay, so once again, Chris Wells, Fairfax County Department of Transportation. I'm the Active Transportation Program Manager. Active transportation is the current industry term for pedestrian and bicycle issues. So as I said, what we do at the county is we look for areas where we could propose striping modifications. And over the years in Hunter Mill, you've actually seen quite a lot of progress. You've seen really a decent network starting to develop through these multiple years of repaving. Why we do this, again, originated with the need to provide bicycle facilities, and then further when the county established its bicycle master plan, this was actually part of the board adopted comprehensive plan approach to providing bicycle facilities. We know in our county we have traffic, and anything we can do to reduce traffic is good. But further than that, our economic development posture in the past decade and moving forward has been completely focused on walkable and bikeable areas. So the beauty of this process is that it's very cost effective. We have this relationship with VDOT over the years, and VDOT deserves credit, and I try to take the time in each one of these meetings to point out that this is really a good news VDOT story. VDOT gets picked on a lot about potholes and snow plows and stuff like that, but VDOT's willingness to work with the county on this is not without a dollar value. There is a cost associated with this, but it's a very modest cost compared to the multi-million-dollar projects that we normally do. But it's really a good news story because it does provide not only that bicycle network, but it provides benefits such as excessive speed reduction and organizing parking and things like that. So, we've really appreciated VDOT's partnership over the years in being able to work with us and to do these striping changes. It's also very challenging. This is the most dynamic and fast-moving process in what normally in government projects take years. As Steve said, this happens every year. We have these meetings at this time to get public input, but the paving guys are going to be coming out, like literally, they're probably out already. So VDOT has a very small window between when we work with them on providing draft information in the fall and the winter to this public input process to getting those plans finalized for the contractors. And like I said, the beauty here is, most of what I do in my job at the county is in our capital projects division. We build trails, we build sidewalks. Those are typically multi-million-dollar projects that are essentially the equivalent of widening a road by a lane, because when we build something in our retrofit construction environment, we have to acquire right-of-way, move utilities, address drainage. And this process here is done very cost effectively, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe a few $100,000 across the county. But in these years of doing this, we've literally picked up 100 or 200 miles of bike lanes. So why do we do this? In America, for many years, for many decades, that is, we made the mistake of focusing on only the confident cyclists and mainly the commuter cyclists, people that could commute to work. And so we built on-road bike lanes on high-speed, high-volume roadways that most people aren't comfortable on. So what we've been doing with this program, the repaving process over these past few years, and in the Hunter Mill District as an example, is working on roads that are much more manageable for people like myself who are not comfortable on a high-speed, high-volume roadway on a bicycle, to be comfortable. So what we know is that there is a small percentage of cyclists that are strong and fearless, enthusiastic and confident, as you see in the pie chart here. But there's a majority of the population that is interested in bicycling and concerned about their safety. And then there's also a large part of the population that we call the no way, no how. They're not going to be riding a bicycle, and that's great. But what we also have learned and are trying to emphasize is, again, not just the commuting aspect of a bicycle trip, but a bicycle trip in your community, a bicycle trip to the store, to an activity center, to your places of worship, to a park, to a school. These are all trips that are non-polluting, don't contribute to the kiss and ride line at the school and things like that. And so if we are able, through a combination of our off-road facilities, such as trails, and on-road facilities, such as the cycling striping facilities, we know that people will use them if they feel comfortable and safe. So what am I talking about? On the right, there is the thing we're trying to provide if there's room, and that's a buffered bike lane, because again, we want these facilities to be comfortable, and so if there's room, we'll provide a buffer between the bicyclists and the passing vehicles. A more typical application is what you see in the middle here, and I believe what we're talking about on the roads tonight are just these standard bike lanes, which is a 5-foot bike lane. And again, that's the type of facility that is comfortable for most, but not necessarily all ages and abilities. And then one other thing that we use, and what you've seen, and in case you're wondering what they are, is what you see on the left, is a shared lane marking, or a sharrow. That's to indicate to drivers that there could be bicyclists there, but we also can place that in the lane as to where we think the safest place to cycle is. If the lane is wide enough, it would typically be to the right of the lane, but if the lane is narrow, it would actually be in the middle of the lane, indicating that the cyclist is safer to take the lane. And we don't use those randomly. They're used really where we have a road that might have a bike lane for a few hundred, a few thousand feet, but then the next block narrows down and there's no room. So then we would put these sharrow markings to indicate that it's a continuation of the bike route. I mentioned the benefits of the striping and the benefits that are for non-cyclists. The upper left, of course, is the cycling. It's more comfortable and safe for cycling. But the other benefits in the top middle, for instance, is that when we introduce bike lanes, the exposure risk for pedestrians is reduced because the vehicles are narrowed into the middle of the roadway more, and so the actual distance that pedestrians crossing either at a crosswalk or not at a crosswalk is reduced because the vehicles are now in this narrower band of the roadway. The upper right is that if you're even a pedestrian just walking along a sidewalk, the bike lanes and the buffer provide a buffer to pedestrians on sidewalks that makes it more comfortable than a vehicle whizzing past you directly. The lower left is indicating how the reduced speeds associated with these restripings can help noise levels and the speeding in the neighborhood. And I don't think we have residential frontage tonight, but if you're curious about other roads that we've done in the past, excuse me, and you live on them, actually pulling out of your driveway can become easier because the sight distance is improved. Once again, because the vehicles are moved into the middle of the roadway, and so the sight distance triangle is improved around parked vehicles where you can actually see better. Oops, why is my computer not going forward? There we go. So here's a before and after photo of Annandale Road. And again, when a road is wide open, has excessively wide lanes, if there's room for bike lanes, by definition, the lanes are too wide. because a standard lane is an 11-foot lane or a 12-foot lane. And if we can carve 5 feet out of that, then the before picture is telling you that that's an excessively wide lane. And what happens in an excessively wide lane is drivers aren't constrained. They don't feel the need to pay as much attention or control their driving as much. And so that the human factors of that is that drivers tend to speed up and drive faster in a situation like that. The after picture you see there is where we've introduced the bike lanes. We've boxed in the parallel parking. We've done a radius coming out of the side street, and then for the right turn into the side street, we have the dash lines, which are what we call puppy tracks, where you would merge into the bike lane. And that the effect of this is the image that a driver perceives as driving down the road is now narrowed. The road is narrowed in the mind of the driver, and I don't want to oversell the speeding reduction issue. Our data shows that the 85th percentile speed, which is what engineers typically look at, that's only reduced 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour. But what our data has shown us is the excessive speeders, those speeders going 10, 15, or 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, they're virtually eliminated when striping like this is done. So again, excuse me, over the years in Hunter Mill, we've done a lot. And so someday when all the roads are repaved, there might not be a lot of restriping opportunities. This year in Hunter Mill, there's a couple of restriping opportunities, but they are important links. So we have tonight MONROE Street and Sunset Hills Road. MONROE Street between Sunrise Valley Drive and the Dulles Toll Road Bridge is 4 to 6 lanes wide with a median. It has intermittent sidewalk and trail on both sides, but no on-street bicycle facilities. The proposal would be in the northbound direction from Sunrise Valley to the bridge to stripe a northbound bike lane, and that'll provide a connection. We have a future capital project on Sunrise Valley Drive to create a bicycle cycle track all the way between the Reston Metro Station and the Innovation Metro Station. And so this northbound bike lane would serve users that would leave Sunrise Valley Drive to go over the Dulles Toll Road into the town of Herndon. The second project that's proposed tonight is Sunset Hills Road down by the WO&D trail crossing from Samuel Morris Drive to Business Center Drive. The existing conditions are the 2 travel lanes with a center turn lane, a sidewalk on the north side, and a partial sidewalk on the south side, and no on-street bike facilities. The proposal would be to stripe it as you see in this photo here, which would be a travel lane in each direction, a center turn lane, and then a bike lane on the outside of each direction. The one other thing that is important to us, and I typically mentioned earlier, but I did not, is pedestrian safety. So before the bicycle master plan was established, the board established a pedestrian program. And that's been my role in the county since that program has been created. So we are always also very interested in pedestrian safety. We as staff scan the roads that are proposed for paving and look for opportunities to add crosswalks or improve crosswalks, such as obvious pedestrian generators, such as schools or parks. If there is a history or a concern about the safety of a crosswalk, the photograph you see here is what we call a median refuge. We don't officially have a budget for doing concrete projects like this, but as I mentioned about the striping and the opportunity and the blank canvas, if we were to want to introduce a median refuge like this at a priority location and the roads being paved, the time is now. to try and act on that, because we would want the striping to be set up to anticipate the concrete median refuge. So now that the paving maps are live, if you as a community look through the 100 mil district and see a road that's being paved, and you say, hey, you know, I've always thought there should be a crosswalk here. That's the kind of community input we're looking for tonight. And then if based on either our own interest in a crosswalk or the community's interest in a crosswalk, we need to perform a crosswalk justification study. Crosswalks are serious engineering issues, and we have to justify them and make sure they're done right. But we certainly, that's the kind of input we're looking for tonight. So likewise, if there's a location that there might be an existing crosswalk that could benefit from a median refuge or something like this, again, we don't have a budget per se for this, but we do try, or we do find ourselves throughout the entire county in a typical paving year, finding a 1 to 2 to 3 or 4 locations like this throughout the county that we do really try and work hard to try and do something like a median refuge like this. And if we can't accomplish it with the paving season, it's still good to know for future funding cycles that there's a need for something like this. So that leads to feedback. So, excuse me. For paving related comments, VDOT has an excellent customer service portal. It's the my.vdot.virginia.gov or the 1-800-4ROAD phone number. Any other VDOT comments, such as drainage or other things that the state highway agency would be the appropriate responder to? Again, that's really the best way to reach VDOT. For the striping related comments, if you are in support of or in opposition to what we're proposing this year, those are sent to the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. This presentation will be on our website, so when you click on that word electronically there, that would take it directly. But then on this slide, you see actually the way to provide us feedback independently. So the website has a long address. I'm not going to read it. You can take a picture. It's going to be on our webpage. But the simplest thing to do is to just go to the County of Fairfax webpage, and in the search box, type 2021 repaving or paving, or in the Department of Transportation, and it'll take you to it. If you need to email us directly, the email is activefairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov. And if you want to mail us comments to our office, we are the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, 4050 Legato Road, Fairfax, Virginia, 22033. So that's the way to contact us. We do want your feedback. I think it's on the previous slide, by April 20th. In particular, if it's related to the striping, as I said, it's a very dynamic process, but we also want your feedback year round. So if you miss the April 20th deadline and you have a safety concern or any other concern, we will certainly take your feedback after the 20th. And often the case is that it'll take more time than this year's paving season to solve the problem anyway. So don't feel that April 20th deadline would prevent you from giving us important feedback, because we do want that. So I mentioned the WebEx Q&A when I began. That's the best way, if you're on your computer, to type questions for us tonight. If you're on your cell phone, the way to ask questions is to press *3, which gives the raise your hand indicator, and then that will add you to the queue to verbally ask your questions. So, oops, with that, I will hand this back to Lauren Delmar, and she can read us the Q&A questions, and we can answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. The first question is for Steve. Why is the secondary road budget lower from last year?
So each year, based on the ratings and evaluation of pavement, and it does change a little bit each year. So some adjustments are made to maintain that 82% on the interstate and primaries. And I do note that over 70% of our budget is on the secondaries, and we continue to put over 70% of our budget on the secondaries. And the secondaries are what, for the most part, what, our neighborhood homes. But we do have to maintain a higher level of ratings on our interstates and primaries. So there's always going to be some fluctuation. The second thing is that, like I mentioned, we do our ratings each year of the pavement condition. And some years, what some might rate as a certain figure, surprisingly, the very next year, some other road that wasn't even close has actually gotten a lot worse all of a sudden. And that happens with expansion and contraction of the pavement and the cold weather. So that's why we do the ratings, scientific, engineering wise, each and every year. So we always have to make some adjustment to make sure we're meeting our interstate, primary, and high volume, also secondary roadways. So it always won't be the same. It'll always fluctuate a little bit, but over 70% of our budget's going into the secondary roadways to try to catch up, as I mentioned earlier in that chart.
Thanks, Steve. I have another question for you.
Okay.
It says, thank you for doing this. It makes my life so much easier, but what is the plan for maintaining all of these wonderful new bike lanes? The ones throughout Reston desperately need sweeping, especially on Lawyers Road, the poster child for road diets. If we create new infrastructure but don't maintain it, no one is going to use the lanes after all this work.
So I fully understand. There's two types of maintenance that have to, well, three types that have to take place. One of the pavement itself, two of the markings of the bike lanes, and then three, yes, every year is the sweeping. And we just released over the last couple of weeks our sweeping contract. And as you know, our late January and all of February, we had something like 8 or 9 mobilization events with ice and snow, sleet, that we put down a lot more sand than we typically would hope for, but that was the weather. And so now we have a lot more sweeping to do this year, but we have annual contracts. They're getting started. And I've asked something, that all the bike lanes, on-road bike lanes, be prioritized. So our maintenance lead is trying to coordinate through all the area headquarters, asking them, even albeit a little late now, they're asking them to try to focus on those areas where we have on-road bike lanes. And keep in mind, in some cases, some of the bike lanes are abutted to parking, and that sometimes complicates it a little bit, but nonetheless, we are trying to prioritize that, and that's a very good question. That's something we do try to work on. But please feel free to hit the myvdot.virginia.gov and ask about any specific road or problem area that you see, and we'll be certain to go back on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Another question for you. I live outside Vienna and my street is classified as red, yet I don't see any projects in 2021 for my area. Is there an appeals process? I still don't understand the rationale for not fixing my street.
So unfortunately for this year, our contracts are all let. We're starting, as I mentioned, in the cycle for next year. But each year they are re-rated and they're adjusted for which roadways are very poor to poor. Sounds like you're referring to one that's currently rated as very poor. It doesn't get any better. It's a matter of how many get added to the very poor list and get in that mix. But certainly we attack those. Those are the ones that we go after. And if it didn't make it this year, there's a better chance it's going to make it next year. But it does, unfortunately, the needs outweigh the budget that we have available. I wish, we're averaging, I think I said 108 million for this year. Be great if we had 200 million each year to do it. We could do a lot more, but that's not the case. So we have to start with the very worst first. And even in those cases, we run out of even very poor paved roads many times before we can get to the poor ones. In this case, we can't even get to always all of the very poor. So please feel free again too to send us in on myvdot.virginia.gov to let us know which one that is, and we'll make sure that our pavement managers are reminded of it. But they do it based on all the science that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation.
Thanks, Steve. I have a question for Chris. Regarding bike lanes, there is no bike lane for lawyers in Vienna or Hunter Mill. These are major routes that cannot be used for commuting. When will you make this bike accessible?
So what we look to do is add bike lanes where there's room. Unfortunately, on Hunter Mill Road, there's only the travel lanes themselves, and so there's no room to add bike lanes. We've added bike lanes on lawyers in two separate areas. The 4-lane lawyers became a road diet and has bike lanes, and then we were able to extend those lawyers road bike lanes further with the repaving a couple of years ago. The repaving process does not allow us to widen the roads. So widening the roads for bike lanes or anything else, shoulders, that would be a capital project that would require significant funding. So this is a process that allows us to accomplish what we can because the roads are being paved. The further maturation of the network ultimately will require capital projects. And so we've had this type of question in the past, and I would think over the next decade or more, we will look and see what we've accomplished with the paving process, and then we actually are going through an update of the bike plan and the trails plan. It's called the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan. You can actually go to our website right now, and we have an interactive map and a survey that you can take, and you can go on that interactive map and highlight that area of Lawyers Road. But what the next, where I was going with this was the next effort as far as how we connect these networks. We'll be looking at, okay, what have we accomplished in building trails, in adding on-road facilities through the paving process, and then where are the network gaps that remain? And then those roads that, like Hunter Mill, for instance, or anything else, would require widening, which would probably just involve a shoulder. A standard roadway shoulder is a minimal pedestrian and bicycle accommodation. But on road, Fairfax County is a 275-year-old county, and many of our roads are what we actually call colonial roads that were not properly engineered and that were essentially paved in place. And so there is significant engineering that would go into simply widening for shoulders. But that's an excellent point. But the process is still going to have to evolve with capital projects, and unfortunately, if a road's not wide enough, cannot be accomplished through repaving.
Thanks, Chris. I have another question for you. Have you considered bike lanes on Parcher Ave in Herndon? People just fly through there and there's a school. Traffic calming would be such an asset.
Oh, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button. You can hear me, but maybe you can see me now. Yes, actually, Parcher is being paved this year, and we are proposing bike lanes on Parcher. So we previously have added a pedestrian refuge island there, as the picture I showed earlier, at the elementary school. But because Parcher is being paved this year, we are proposing, and it's wide, we are proposing on Parcher Avenue bike lanes in both directions, the 2 travel lanes, and because parking is a premium on Parcher, maintaining all the legal parking spaces, parallel parking spaces as well. So yes, Parcher is proposed for bike lanes. That's in the Drainsville district, so it's not part of our presentation tonight.
And I'll just add, we're working on 2 new crosswalk markings on Parcher as well. I don't know for sure whether they'll make it through the system, but that's the goal. Another question for you, Chris. Since there are no bike facilities on the MONROE Bridge over the toll road, can sharrows be added?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure either Steve or I know the answer, so we might have to take that back. But I'm afraid I'm recalling that because bridges are concrete, we don't have the ability to do pavement markings on concrete as we do on asphalt. So, Steve, unless you know the answer to that, that's something we'll have to follow up with. I'm certainly aware that the northbound MONROE Bridge is a pinch point for bicycles. That's the original, probably 1960 bridge over the Dulles Access Road. The southbound bridge is the modern bridge with a trail to it. Steve, do you know the answer to the whether we can add markings to concrete bridge structures?
There have been some cases where we can do it, but it all depends on the existing width of the bridge deck, the same as it is for the existing width of some roadways. If it's many bridges are very limited, and that's generally because a bridge costs so much. So it was never maybe originally built to handle any future expansion, if you will, of the existing surface. So many times it requires widening the bridge deck itself or an abutting crossing. But I don't know the answer for that specific location. So we could circle back.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that is actually the proper use of a sharrow, that where we have a bike lane that terminates. So we will look into that. Thank you.
So I'm not sure who wants to take this one, but the next question is there any addressing of the issues of adjacent sidewalks and paths during the paving process?
So I can answer that. Sidewalks and paths that are off the road are not part of the roadway repaving process. However, sidewalks and paths, and I assume this individual means the paved 8-foot, typically 8 feet, paved shared use paths that sometimes also go along a road on one side or the other. Those are done through our maintenance program. And again, they're also on a cycle with the budget that we have. But certainly if you have a problem with a certain area where there's an issue, you can let us know. But one thing I wanted to, and Lauren, since we have the opportunity for a moment, if you don't mind letting me share screen again for everyone's benefit. VDOT doesn't maintain all of the roadways, all of the sidewalks and paths. That's jointly done depending upon how it was developed and who maintains it. So I want to show that there is, in fact, a walkway maintenance map. And can everybody see my screen right now with a... Everybody
Yes.
see the graphic? Okay.
I can see it.
Okay, thank you. So on the walkway maintenance map, it's color coded. It does show trails that are by Fairfax County Park Authority in brown. It does have the Department of Public Works, Fairfax County. Those are in blue. Virginia Department of Transportation is in yellow, which you can see in this particular screenshot. There are some that are, some that aren't. So it really depends on where it is, but you can look up a specific area on this walkway maintenance map to try to make that determination. Or if you put in your inquiry, we'll look it up and circle back with the appropriate persons, okay?
Thank you. I have another question for you.
Okay.
Wasn't able to ask this during the Dranesville presentation. What happens to vehicles that haven't been moved when the paving contractors begin?
So we do go through an extensive effort to notify the property owner. In some cases, it's a very good question. I don't know all the details, but I know there are some occasions where we'll go through 2 and 3 efforts. Sometimes we'll even shift and over to do another road and ask the contractor to come back, because we understand sometimes people go out of town for a week or 2 weeks and they weren't aware at all. And even though we put the stakes up a few days in advance, they might not have been there when the stakes were put up. So occasionally that happens. And in a real rare extreme case, we might actually have it towed to another location just temporarily and notify the individual. It might be just like around the corner, but typically we pivot and work on other roads in the subdivision and come back while we continuously try to talk with that property owner. But that's not 100% of the answer, but it's generally how we'll try to approach it. I can't think of any case where we just, took a car and, impounded it or something. We wouldn't do that. We would try to work it out.
Yeah, Steve, and let me just add, Allison, who was the person that did this presentation for VDOT for many years, she said essentially the same thing, that if a vehicle needs to be towed, it's typically just towed around the corner. It's not ticketed or anything like that. But as you said, that's the last resort, but it's just to get out of the way of the paving, so to speak.
Okay, the next question is, rather than widening the road, why not add a bike lane separately on Hunter Mill? There are trails that can be paved.
I'm sorry, Lauren, could you repeat the question?
Lauren, I can go ahead and repeat it. It's from Bruce Wright.
Sorry, thank you.
The question is, there is a new trail from Monroe to the Hunter Mill Metro Station. There's a mid-block crossing near that new trail. Will the crosswalk be maintained or improved? Using that new trail will be the most direct route for new residents of the multifamily units on the east side of Monroe.
Okay, thank you. I'm fully aware of that trail project, but that's a good point, Bruce. Thank you for reminding that. I'm not sure that the folks who have worked on the details of this repaving know the importance of that crosswalk. So typically we are always replacing the crosswalks and typically even improving them. But that's a great comment. We'll make note of that and make sure that that crosswalk is enhanced as part of the repaving.
Thank you both. Sorry, I actually went a little bit out of order, Steve, which is why you guys heard a different question. But I'll go back to the question I was asking, which was, rather than widening the road, why not add a bike lane separately on Hunter Mill? There are trails that can be paved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not exactly the terminology that I normally use, but what I think you're asking is why not add a trail or a shared use path, an off-road facility, and that's actually a higher level of facility. It's our preferred facility, but those are very expensive. So even though there may be what we call a goat trail, or a worn footpath from pedestrian activity next to a roadway, we have to build things to standards and to meet the American with Disabilities Act standards. So they have to be ADA. So a standard VDOT trail, a standard shared use path in the VDOT system is a 10-foot shared use path, and that's actually a federal standard, not a VDOT standard, and that's a 10-foot shared use path with 2-foot shoulders. So that's 14 feet of perfectly level and graded space. So that would, Hunter Mill Road being a 2-lane road, it would literally look like we've added a 3rd lane off to the side. The county's public facilities manual has what we call major paved trails and minor paved trails, which allow us to do an 8-foot trail or a 6-foot trail. And that would probably be more context sensitive along a road like Hunter Mill. But again, that's a significant engineering project. Even the lower of those, a 6-foot trail with 1 foot shoulders on each side, would require 8 feet of clearing and leveling and construction. So our cost for a facility such as that is fairly significant, between $1,000 and $2,000 a foot. So we have built many trails and sidewalks over the years, and we will continue to do so. But it is not something that we have funding readily available for right now. So we have had requests for trails along Hunter Mill Road in the past, and we will continue to consider that. But that would be the best solution, but it is an expensive solution. And I should also add, it has impacts to the property owners. So most of the properties on Hunter Mill Road are fairly set back, so it wouldn't necessarily be right outside someone's front door. But we need those property owners to be partners with us in the county, because the impacts to vegetation and other property issues are always intensely personal to the people that whose properties we need to cross. So we are often trying to draw the balance between a good suggestion such as this, but the balance between the impacts to the affected property owners and how construction of something like that would ultimately work out.
Thanks. I have some sort of follow-up items that I want to talk about before asking the next question. So we have a note that the MONROE Bridge has a bikes may use full lane sign in lieu of having sharrows already. I also have a suggestion that it says, why not put a link to the county map that shows maintenance responsibilities / ownership on the VDOT work request page? Suggest also letting people know they should check the map before submitting a work request. So I don't know if VDOT's considered that, Steve. And then the last one is, so the next one's sort of a question, but I have a partial answer to it. I live at Paddock Lane in Reston, and our cul-de-sac of 9 homes is crumbling. It's in desperate need of repaving. It's creating a danger to walk on our street, and there is no sidewalk on our cul-de-sac. So I think this is just a small cul-de-sac south of Steeplechase. My father's been in contact with Ms. Hoff about this issue, and I believe she forwarded you the pictures of the hazardous street conditions. I don't know if Steve wants to address that one.
Yes, Ms. Grilliot, I did get the email from Shamali Hoff, and she did forward it to me, and one of our assistants responded back that we put it on the list for next year because unfortunately it's not on there this year. However, and looking at the pictures, I can see that there's an awful lot of damage to it, if you will, and it is rather breaking apart. So I will make a note of it and ask our maintenance group if they can go out and do some patching. And I don't mean just putting asphalt right on top of it or something, but digging it up and restoring it around the edges to try to help it get by until it does come back as a full paving effort on the entire cul-de-sac. But I do have the pictures, I do have the email, so thank you very much.
All right, the next question is for Steve. Can we get visibility on when a particular road is scheduled to be fixed, understanding that the priority may change?
Sorry, Lauren, I'm trying to find that question. Can you repeat that? I just didn't see that.
Sorry, it's I'm again going a little out of order. Can we get visibility on when a particular road is scheduled to be fixed, understanding that the priority may change?
Sure. On the pavement map, if your road is highlighted in red to be worked on this year, you can click on that and it will pop up a palette that tells you the project manager's name and his email address, and you can ask him when he thinks it's going to get done this year, because they do leave a window of time, and I'll just give an example, April through end of June, for a contractor to do, say, these 5 neighborhoods. And then it's up to the contractor to just make sure he gets all 5 done in that 3-month or 4-month window. He does them in the order that makes sense for him or her as far as logistics go, but as long as he meets the obligation of the contract. So the project manager that pops up when you click on that roadway might have a lot of that information for you.
Thank you. The next question is, as a statement, but I'll take it as a question. I thought there were funds for using a certain percentage of maintenance funds for paving shoulders or other bike facilities.
Actually, no. Sometimes the shoulders are already part of the roadway prism, and we'll repave that if it's so shoulders happen on an area where there's no curb and gutter, and typically a shoulder might be 2 feet to 4 feet to 6 feet. And if so, that shoulder would be repaved as part of the overall road. It's not always conducive necessarily to other things such as bikes or what have you, but it just depends. But typically the shoulder would be, if it's a paved shoulder to begin with. If it's a gravel shoulder, and keep in mind, you typically have a 1 or 2 foot paved shoulder, then gravel. But if it's the full gravel area of the shoulder, we would not just repave that shoulder or convert it from a gravel shoulder to a paved shoulder. We're basically repaving what pavement is already there.
Thank you. The next question is, the buffered bike lanes that are installed along VDOT roads feature very limited cross-hatching lines, typically a few at the start and the end of the buffer. Presumably this is a cost-saving measure, but this means that it may not be clear that the pair of parallel lines are actually a buffer. Typically in urban settings, the buffer is hatched along the entire length. Many drivers do not seem to realize that this area is a buffer and they drive in this area. I experience this constantly. What is the policy? And if anyone's not sure, I can provide some technical support.
So, this is a joint VDOT and county issue. We recognize that issue, and it is done as a cost-saving issue. However, if there's a particular location that is a problem, VDOT is willing to revisit that and consider that. Again, this is a partnership that does cost VDOT money, and so we are sensitive to that. I didn't mention it, but also the county shares the cost of installing the signs. So this would not be successful if we didn't do things as cost effectively as possible. If you're referencing South Lakes Drive, the one thing we did learn about South Lakes is that that buffer is a little too wide, and that when South Lakes is repaved again, we would actually make the travel lane slightly wider, the bike lane slightly wider, and the buffer slightly narrower. So again, this is an evolving process that once it's paved and put down, we're not going to tear it up and do it differently. But if there's a particular area of concern, if it's not South Lakes, if you'd like to let us know. If it is South Lakes, if there's a particular area that it would benefit from an additional crosshatch striping, we can take that back to traffic engineering and ask them to consider that.
This person followed up and said North Shore Drive after entrance to Lake Anne.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can, as Chris mentioned, we do it as a cost savings measure because everywhere that we do it, we have to maintain it and continue to redo it as it wears out. So you do see gaps, and the purpose in some respects is that when a driver's sitting at average 3.5 feet above ground eye height, their visual as they're approaching it, they'll even kind of see it even if there are gaps in it. At least that's kind of the traffic engineering theory. But if there are some places that that gap causes some issue, please do let us know. We have no problem with going out and putting a couple more in between the gaps on occasion in some places where we do seem to see a problem. So again, in that case, you could, that's something we do and would go back and add, not to help Chris out there. You can let us know at the myvdot.virginia.gov. Again, it's just the portal of access to letting us know about things like that. Thank you.
Thanks. So going back to the question about sort of when a particular road might be improved or repaved, it sounds like that question was actually referring to projects that are not scheduled for this year. So the question again is, can we get visibility on when a particular road might be fixed, understanding that the priority may change?
So I can't predict any road beyond this year. And that's because each year we do the pavement evaluations because things do change. Every year, some could be rated at one level. And while that road level of rating may not go down for that road, there may be other roads that have a much poorer base underneath that we're not aware of because maybe it's has a 60-year-old base pavement to it that for reasons of expansion and contraction with the cold weather and drainage getting underneath, some reason starts to accelerate the pavement getting worse faster than maybe another one that gradually got worse. And I understand that's, you know, it's complicated in that sense, but that's why we also do the ratings every single year because things do change a lot. We've seen that happen, but in general, it pretty much follows a trend line. Also, I will say in general, pavement lasts typically 15 to 25 years. We do have some roads that, for whatever reason, already have hit the very poor range after 11 or 12 years, but typically that range is expectation anyway, is that it'll last 15 to 25. So in that cycle of things, we're kind of chasing our tail in that cycle, if you will, but we will, you know, get to it. So but please let us know what ones you're concerned about, and we'll make sure that we have it, you know, in the queue of understanding to go back and look at our rating system. Thank you.
So that is all I have in the Q&A at this time, but I do have one person who's raised their hand. Now we prefer to get the questions. Oh, I'm getting more questions in the Q&A. We prefer to get the questions in the Q&A. So if the person, oh, the hand's down. Okay, great. So if you have any further questions, you want to put them in the Q&A, that would be the best way for us to take them. But if anyone on the phone wants to ask a question, they can press *3 in order to get their hand raised because there's no other way to ask a question if you're on the phone. I'm going to read the next question, which is under the policy for integrating bicycle and pedestrian accommodations 2004, new procedures included spending 2% of the paving budget in each VDOT construction division to provide paved shoulders, page 20 of VDOT state bicycle policy plan. So that's back to the comment about if there's specific funding for this.
So, yeah, sorry, 1 second there. I was just calling that back up. So, I can't speak to it in that great a detail, but what I do want to say is, I mean, there are roads that have currently maybe a 1 foot, literally a 1 foot shoulder, and really it's just part of the roadway prism. And then we paint the white line for the outside edge, 1 foot inside that. So it has basically a 1 foot shoulder section, if you will. And there are areas that are outside of it that have a ditch to control roadway runoff, which helps to drain the underlying area of the pavement. And in some cases, we do add perhaps another foot if there's room to do so, if we have right of way to do so, if it doesn't involve cutting out new ditches and changing drainage and what have you. So we do a little bit of work on the shoulder areas, but as you might have mentioned there, having looked up the policy, and that's 2004, but I'm not really sure what the latest is. But I know that we do some of that work, but it's not adding, say, a 4 foot shoulder or a 6 foot shoulder along the roadway. It's basically to keep the existing shoulder from crumbling and falling apart and affecting the actual travel lane.
Great. So the next question is, hi, I mentioned before about the repavement of Coltsbrook Drive. How does the neighborhood road get on this to-do list? I assume roads are being repaved according to zip code because nothing has been done to Coltsbrook Drive since 1994. Thank you.
Yeah. So I can't speak back to when it was done, 1994. That is a 25 years ago period, and it sounds like in the worst of worlds, that 15 to 25 year timeline I talked about, it'd probably be coming right up on it. But certainly feel free. I appreciate and understand how this, in neighborhoods in particular, this is a problem. And that's, as I mentioned on our program, we put 70% plus of our funds towards secondary roads, which are mostly neighborhood roads, with the limited budget we have to try to get back through it. But it sounds like just from the time frame alone that it's probably due. But if you would, please do so on the myvdot.virginia.gov, so it's there and reminded of us. But we'll continue to, like I say, we watch that every year. But I'd have to imagine in one like that, it'd be coming up, sometime in the next year, 2 or 3. I don't know for sure, but.
Thank you. The next question is, what does the proposed Sunset Hills bike lane connect to at the west terminus?
That would be me. Unfortunately, it doesn't connect to anything. So Sunset Hills Road at that point converts from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road. And in the 4-lane section, there's not any width to add a bicycle facility. So the bike lanes will end in the westbound direction. Recognizing that this is a fairly short stretch of Sunset Hills Road, the benefits again are in narrowing the roadway to get the vehicles to drive slower, but also to give that excessive space in the 2-lane section from the vehicles to the cyclists. So this isn't the typical application of bike lane markings that we would do, but given that the W&OD trail is in this location, that's literally the biggest, the highest volume bicycle facility in the entire state of Virginia. So we felt it was important to make this proposal in this area of Sunset Hills.
And sorry, Chris, I think there's another follow-up to that, which is, I'll read it. Concerned about the area around post office. The left turn lane backs up and traffic passing on the right goes into the fog line. Worried about that those drivers will encroach into a bike lane.
Sure. So that is an issue. If if there's, of course, not a cyclist there, then that's pavement and it's striping, and that's actually completely legal. If there is a cyclist there, a driver should see that cyclist and not do such a maneuver. So in either case, if there was not a bike lane striped, it would be there would still be a bicyclist there, and so the intent would be that the bicycle striping would alert the driver to be aware of and yield to a bicyclist. You know, we have to consider, as I stated, that right now in the existing condition of the roadway, a bicyclist is legally allowed to be riding along there, and so there's not an issue that we're making it worse by striping the bicycle lane. We actually believe that we're making it better, but that's a valid point. That if we need to do additional signage, for instance, such as "Do not pass on right," that's something that could be considered. Obviously, the post office is a traffic generator in that location.
Thank you. I have someone who said that they've sent 2 questions directly to Chris. Chris has a hard time viewing the questions because he's also showing his screen at the same time. So if it's possible for you to copy and paste the questions into the main chat box so that I can, hi, I'm getting one of them. Great. So if you could do that with the other one too, then I can read them. In the meantime, I have a follow-up question regarding Coltsbrook Drive. To add to the Coltsbrook Drive, our whole community is classified as poor in the map. Many roads were done in the late 80s. We have complained. What more do we need to do?
This is Steve. Thank you. I understand. I mean, I know that I've myself at supervisor's office through Shamali have asked about this one as well, and probably 2 times during the preparations for this upcoming season. For some reason, it did not make the cut, but I will continue to ask for it, to look into it. Meanwhile, if there are areas that have really bad potholes and crumbling, I've made a note of it, and I will ask our maintenance to go out and see if they can work a patch job. And when I say patch job, again, it's literally taking up portions of it and repatching it to get by until it can fall on the list to be repaved. I understand. I appreciate your question and follow-up.
Okay, so the questions that originally went to Chris, the first one is, hi, how will the Monroe Street bike lane terminate at the Dulles Toll Road Bridge? Cyclists should be encouraged to take the lane over the bridge. The roadway is too narrow to share with autos. Most cyclists merge into the road too late and then ride the right fog line, which encourages close passes. I've been buzzed more than a couple times right before on the bridge at this location going northbound.
Sure. So I think I addressed that in my previous comments about the sharrows there. That the northbound Monroe Street Bridge, in my estimation, is the original bridge over the Dulles Access Road. So 1960 or so, early 1960s. So that is it's narrow by modern standards for vehicles, let alone for cyclists. As Lauren mentioned earlier, And I do recall now there are bicycle may use full lane signs there. But the issue is not going to go away until that bridge is replaced. The way that bridges are replaced in Virginia and in America is by age and by their sufficiency rating. And so that bridge is probably coming to its end of its useful life. And so when that bridge is replaced, we'll be able to add on-road or off-road or both bicycle facilities. So for now, that is only a place for a confident cyclist. There is a trail on the southbound bridge. It's a barrier separated trail. And so if you're not comfortable, and I would not be comfortable myself going on the northbound Monroe Street Bridge, I would use the new traffic signal installed by the developer and cross over to the western side of Monroe and use that shared use path trail on the southbound bridge.
So Chris, there's a follow-up. It sounds like the question's a little bit more technical about how the striping will be. It says question is how will the bike lane terminate? Will it narrow to a V with bike lane end sign? Where will that happen? Right at the bridge?
Yes, it will. The bike lane will disappear. I don't have the striping plans in front of me, so I don't have the exact details. And that's that's certainly a good technical point that we want to make sure that that's clear to both the cyclists and the drivers. But yes, the bike lane will end. It will. There will be bike lane end signs, and it will essentially terminate into the travel lane. So as that lines up to that narrow bridge, that's a very good point. Thank you for making that point. We'll need to make sure that we engineer that to the best of our abilities.
All right. Another question about Monroe Street. Why didn't we consider bike lanes southbound on Monroe Street, south of the Dulles Toll Road? It had a wide shoulder lane before it was repaved with an extra lane last year. Now all cyclists must take the lane because the wide right lane was eliminated.
Sure, thank you. The simple answer is it's not wide enough. The developer is building an 8-foot concrete sidewalk along the frontage there, but because of the turning movements and the width of the roadway there, if we were to try and stripe a bike lane there, it would actually potentially look like a parking facility. So we always have to balance the fact that around a metro station or around a high density development, that a bike lane striping is almost the same size as a parallel parking striping. And in this case, not only is there not enough room, but the development activity there complicates it, and they are building a wider off-road facility along their frontage.
Thanks, Chris. So that completes all the questions that I have. We will check back in. I'll let Chris say his closing words, and then we'll check back in to make sure nothing else has come in the meantime.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren, and Steve, and Supervisor Alcorn, and most importantly, thank you to the public that has been joined us tonight. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your interest in bicycling and pedestrian and overall community safety and benefits out of a population of 1.2 million, and therefore, over 100,000 in the 100 mil district. Those of you who've taken your time tonight to be with us and to provide that input is much appreciated. This is what we as professional staff do for our careers, and so we absolutely benefit from local knowledge of the residents who are affected or who use these facilities. So I can't thank you enough for your involvement and your input into this process tonight.
And we don't have any additional questions.
Thank you, everyone, as well.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Again, if anyone has any, if you're lying awake at night and something pops into your head that you forgot to ask tonight, please feel free to reach out to us through our comment opportunities. And again, we are all public servants, so if you need something directly from the Hunter Mill Supervisor's Office, Supervisor Alcorn and his staff are always interested in hearing from folks, and us in the departments of transportation, Fairfax and Virginia as well. So thank you again, and good night.